Welcome to the KGI podcast, where we feature students, faculty, staff, and alumni to get an insight into the innovation and collaboration around campus and beyond graduation. In today's episode, we chat with Joon Kim, who serves as the director of two KGI programs, the Postbac Premedical Certificate, or PPC, and the Postbac Pre-PA Certificate, also called the PPA. In this conversation, Joon talks about alumni outcomes and PPC's interdisciplinary connections with the other KGI programs. He also shares a preview of the PPA program that starts this August. Welcome to the podcast, Joon. Can you begin by telling us how you first became interested in coming to KGI?
I sure can. So before coming to KGI, I was at the University of Southern California working with science majors, primarily students that wanted to go into medicine as a future career. Well, when I read up on KGI, it really stood out for me because one of the things that I really encountered quite a bit working with undergraduates was the chasm that sort of existed between their undergraduate education and their future career. Oftentimes, students found a disconnect and loss of motivation trying to find a way to connect their education with their future career. And so when I read about KGI and looked into it some more, I saw that it is a place where that chasm is really sort of eliminated. There's a bridge that is directly built to prepare our students for a productive and fruitful career right after school. So I was really impressed by taking the knowledge and converting them into skills and competencies, which are definitely necessary to compete in today's competitive job market.
And obviously, you covered a lot of what makes KGI unique, specifically the programs that you lead, including PPC. Can you talk a bit about the outcomes that you've seen since that program came on board in 2010?
So the outcomes have been amazing, and I mean that in multiple ways. Well, first off, for a Postbac Pre-Med program, the outcome that I think everyone is going to focus immediately on is the number of students that continue on and get accepted into medical school, which, by the way, we're hovering right around 83-84%. So that is pretty impressive and greatly satisfying. However, for me, what's really remarkable is not just the students that go on to medical school and then ultimately to become physicians, but those students who thought they wanted to go into medicine as physicians, but after coming to KGI, they discover other interests. They have been challenged to really look at medicine from so many different perspectives, and certainly from non-traditional perspectives from the insurance provider, maybe from the government, maybe the patient's perspective, a lot of different perspectives. And I think when they do that, it forces them to also sort of re-examine their own perspective. And so to have students that come here for medicine, to go on to medical school, but then go on to PhD programs, dental school, full-time employment at biotech companies, that's pretty exciting. And this is not just my words, but these are the conversations I get to enjoy having with our alumni.
You have another colleague, Elba, who helps you as well. Can you elaborate or touch on what types of responsibilities you and Elba deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Elba came on board 2 years ago, and she has been a tremendous, valuable asset to the program in KGI. When it comes to advising, we know that student population is very diverse, and every student has their own unique needs and challenges. And so to have another colleague who can provide quality advising is such a valuable asset. And so, again, we come from two different life experiences and background, and certainly that is an asset when we meet with our students. But, because our program consists of not just a curriculum, our Postbac Pre-Med program and Postbac Pre-PA programs have a pretty heavy co-curricular component to it, which means that there's a lot of outside of the classroom activities that make an integral part of the program. So that's where Elba and I work together to ensure that whether it be campus visits, guest speakers, mock interviews, all the things that you wouldn't think is necessary in a successful application to a graduate health program, it actually needs to be addressed, and we address those in a very deliberate, intentional way to prepare our students be successful.
And you alluded to it, but the PPA program, pre-physician assistant program, coming on board, enrolling its first cohort this fall. Can you talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between that program and PPC?
Absolutely. So the PPA, we love three-letter acronyms around here. So the PPA, the Postbac Pre-PA, is similar to the Postbac Premedical Certificate program, PPC program, in that both are what we call academic enhancers, meaning that it's geared for students who just didn't do as well as they would have liked during their undergrad. And so in order to be competitive, they need some additional coursework, or maybe it's additional clinical experience, or maybe it's an increase in their standardized exam. It's something that makes them less than competitive. And so by coming to our program or any program where, again, the objective is to enhance their credentials, that they would become much more competitive and likely successful for gaining acceptance into med school or PA school. Speaking of those two different programs, it is actually, when we look at the statistics, PA programs tend to be more competitive than medical school. Medical schools as a whole tend to be in the 40% acceptance rates, whereas PA programs tend to be down in the 30%. So certainly a demand for postbac programs and various academic enhancement is gaining a lot of popularity just based upon the sheer level of competition. So in terms of the two programs, they're very similar. They parallel in pretty much the curriculums. They're taking the same classes. The one class that might be sort of differentiating between the PPA and PPC might be medical terminology, since medical terminology is a recommended requirement for many PA programs, but not so for medical school. The other big differences are that students that are interested in pursuing PA admissions, they're going to need quite a bit of clinical hours. And so our PPA program is set up so that our students can gain up to 1,000 hours during their time in the program. Our PPC students already come to us with some level of clinical experience. However, interestingly enough, they do not require as much clinical experience as the pre-PA students. Everything else is going to be very similar. You have different standardized exams, MCAT for medical school, GRE for some PA programs. We're going to do the visits to the medical schools. We're going to do visits to PA programs. So very similar, but slightly different because the requirements are different.
And with these two programs, PPC and PPA, how do you feel these students benefit from being in the mix with all these other different programs, whether it's School of Pharmacy, the other programs within the School of Applied Life Sciences?
So in health or graduate health education, we frequently talk about interdisciplinary education. This is the opportunity for our learners to study and interact with other students pursuing different areas of study. So this is something that definitely we have a very unique IPE, and that is that we have students that want to go work for industry. They want to work for pharma or biotech companies. To be mixed in with such students in their classes, they get a very different learning experience. And so I find that it is a great sort of preliminary exposure to what it means to study with a diverse group of learners. And certainly we will find creative ways to have our PPA students and PPC students work together. But really the secret ingredient, or maybe it's not too secret because it's all over our website, is that our students really engage with one another and work together towards a common goal, and that is for the patient's well-being and health. So with PPA and PPC, it really is something unique in that our students' experience is very collaborative, which I am personally very proud of, having been a former pre-med student myself many, many years ago. I think being in an environment where you feel supported not just by the faculty and staff of the institution, but by your peers is a tremendous asset. Oftentimes, you'll hear a lot of these students talk about how competitive everyone is, and it becomes really discouraging to be surrounded by such individuals that are only out for their own self-gain. So that's probably one of the highlights of our learning community.
And now we're in the sprint towards commencement, it seems like. But once your PPC grads go on, the fun doesn't stop for you. You also have a hand in the summer programs. Can you mention one specifically that you're taking the lead on?
Absolutely. So we have a 2-week summer Explore Med program, and this is just 2 weeks of just that. It's just exploration. It is not meant to boost up any credentials because, let's face it, how much boosting can you do in 2 weeks? However, during these 2 weeks, this is open to any students, undergrad, freshmen, all the way up to even recent graduates, where for 2 weeks you would be shadowing various clinical healthcare professionals. It can be in different specialties within medicine. It could be a podiatrist. It can be a physical therapist. It can be a dentist. But to shadow various healthcare professionals. And then also to complement that, we will also be taking trips to local graduate health programs. So we're going to get a chance to hear directly from either the director or dean of admissions regarding their medical school, pharmacy school, dental school, optometry school, PA school, nursing school, veterinary medicine school, and anything else that we're able to coordinate. So it's a really nice 2-week quick overview of all the pre-health options for students.
And lastly, so our listeners can get a better insight into who you are outside of KGI, is there a specific hobby, activity, organization you'd want to mention?
As a father of 3 young children, pretty much any free time that I have, I enjoy spending them with my 13-year-old daughter, my 10-year-old son, and my 4-year-old daughter. Currently, we do reside in Claremont, so if you see us riding our bikes and you see a trail of those 3 kids, that would be me.